Hopefully this works. Okay, I do want to thank you for coming to this session by signing up and saying, yes, I'm willing to learn more, I'm willing to try more. I really appreciate that effort because I think it's going to help move us forward. And when we got together a couple of weeks ago, some of you guys were in that session in the library, we kind of learned a little bit about, from that sample group, and I know Carmi will debate on how good of a sample it was, that where there might be some room for movement for Green Run and where maybe we need to wait down the line. Some of this, again, before we fully drink all of the Kool-Aid. One of the things that teachers seem to indicate that they may be willing to do is on the topic of redos and retakes. Of maybe I'd try something out a little bit or I'd think about it. And again, from the session before, I want to emphasize as we go through this that we're not trying to have you wholesale change your grading practices, but think about, in the context of what you do, can you adopt any of the stuff that we're doing? All right, I mentioned in the bigger session, a guy named Rick Wormley, which we're going to get to in a second, but first I wanted to share my sole purpose, really simple today, on what I'd like you to take out of this. We would like to, in the bigger session we talked a lot of theory, stoked conversation, got debate going. I want to see if we can't commit to trying to take some of that theory, take it into practice in our classrooms, and find out how it works. Okay, and sorry this is a little small. Our Virginia Beach guidelines on this don't really say, there's no school board policy relating to redos and retakes yet, at least. There may be coming down the line, who knows. But the guidelines do talk about it, that if a student has not been successful on a graded assignment, they should have the opportunity for additional instruction and reassessment. That's something they should be able to do. And the guidelines go on to talk to parents, and this is the one that kind of came up in the session there, that teachers are or may exercise their professional judgment in whether or not they want to replace formative grades with summative grades at the end. And what Kelly brought up in the main session did say that conversely, it does say, you can consider the possibility of replacing a lower summative grade that's lower than the formative grades, replace those formative grades as well. That remains probably a hot debate that we don't quite know the answer to yet, and how we get there, we'll see. And again, sorry that's small, but just wanted to let you know. Yes?
Page 2, your point that said page 2, did it say students must? Is that the verb they use? And where did that come from?
This comes from the grading guidelines for parents and students, right there.
Who have not been successful.
Must have an opportunity for additional
So
instruction
they use
and
the word
reassessment.
must.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, right. That's in the guidelines.
Whole thing is
Guidelines, correct. Yeah, it's not policy. There is no Virginia Beach policy on the school board has not said this is what you have to do in relation to read. They haven't really addressed it at all yet, but the guidelines are trying to address it some there. Okay, so when watching this video, Rick Wormley is going to provoke some reaction with you, okay? He's going to talk about some things, you're going to be like, I don't agree with that, okay? What I'm going to ask you to do today is to take that and just toss it, all right? Don't even consider it. If he says something that you disagree with, talk about that later down the road. All I want you to try to latch onto is something that he says that you're like, say, I might consider that. That makes some sense to me. I could maybe run with a piece of that he's talking about. So I'd like to encourage you to take the things that he says that you like and try to discard the stuff that you don't like and save that for another day. Is it helpful if I turn off the lights?
One of the issues that always comes up is how teachers deal with failure. And that always leads to a conversation about redos, retakes, do-overs. And we have to meet that head on. There's this mindset that I have to be real rigid with this in order to teach kids to respect and honor deadlines and whatever else it might be to get them ready for that larger world. But that's actually not very constructive in a lot of places. So let's take a look first at failure, and then we'll see how that kind of moves into the discussion about retakes or do-overs. A lot of times teachers will think that they're doing the right thing by waving from the rim of the pit. We all become these rim wavers. The child has dug a pit for himself. He's really dug himself in. He was irresponsible, whatever it was. And we sit there and we go, so it's cold down there, and there's no way out. It's a little bit lonely. Well, that just stinks. Join us when you can. That'll learn you. And we wag the admonishing finger from afar, as if that will teach. It doesn't. There must be hope. Without hope, you have a much bigger problem than your grading system or differentiated instruction. You have a kid who wants to throw it on the ball and go home. I can't teach if my whole mindset is gotcha, instead of, hey, what do I need to do so you are successful? So one of the things we can do is we can jump in that pit, and we can say, even though it might not be true, we can act like it and qualify for an Academy Award. I've been here before. I know the way out. Come with me. That's actually much more constructive. It speaks to Carol Dweck's notion of growth mindset as opposed to fixed intelligence. I was never good at math. I won't be good at this math. I will never be good at math. I don't have a math gene in my body. Just let me take the test and let me take my F. That's fixed intelligence. Growth mindset is more, you know what, I don't know it now. But with enough effort and the resources, I can come to know it. And to the same level as anybody else who knows it well. That's that growth mindset that we want to cultivate in our classrooms. A lot of teachers hide behind that 50-50 notion. Like, the kid has to meet me halfway. No, after 25 years of teaching, it's much more 60-40. And the one kid who sits in the back of the room and never interacts, 90-10. We don't want it to be, you can get a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. We want it to be, you can get a horse to water, but you can't make it thirsty. It turns out you can. As the old joke goes, hand out salt licks to every single kid. I have to get them to the content and make it so compelling they want to drink from it. I don't leave it to their immaturity. For instance, a kid who says, I don't care if I get an F. School sucks. Pardon the vernacular there, but that happens a lot, either spoken or at least considered. That kid who says that I don't care about the F, school's just terrible, should not be left in charge of his learning and thereby his destiny. But a lot of teachers abdicate their responsibility. We're like editors working with writers. One of the great things we do if we're editing somebody else is save the writer from himself. So I'm going to jump in and get face-to-face with that immature, morphing human, and I'm going to say, no, you're not allowed to give up on yourself. I'm now going to put everything in place so you actually partake in the content and you learn. I won't let his immaturity or lack of development dictate the level of his rise. So failure is not something to demonize. There's a wonderful saying, a wonderful book out there, failure is not an option. NASA scientists use it. Lots of people use it. Business leaders use that phrase. But they do it and they explain what it really means, which is very, very powerful. But if we use that phrase just by itself, it actually becomes a negative. Failure is not only an option, it is preferred. Exposure to consistent success doesn't teach us as much as exposure to failure. In fact, in the top 3 all-time best teaching strategies, recovering from a blind alley, a stumble, actually teaches more than just walking normally through it and never falling. We want to make it actually okay to fail, but then to recover from it. And if that means it means that zeros are fine, F's are fine, as long as they're recoverable in full. Now that begs the question, what about retakes and do-overs? Do I count them a lot? Do I not? What's up with that? Well, it turns out if you look at a lot of the instructional models and research out there, we have to do things over and over again. I know some studies suggest 24 times before we can get to even 80% proficiency. Well, that's important. I get that. That's fine. But how do people become really, really proficient? By doing things over and over again. But our classrooms don't allow for that because we have this curriculum overload. We have to get through this over and over. But try to imagine, I've got time to do 24 persuasive essays, 24 labs on ions to teach you about ions. We don't have time to do that. So we think we're teaching them deadlines and responsibility, but actually doing something that is not sound instruction. That's not good. So from time to time, as time and resources allow, we need to open ourselves up to redoing things. So think about it. LSATs, MCATs, praxis exam for teachers in the United States, bar exam for lawyers, CPA exams for accountants, driver's license tests, auto mechanic certifications, pilot's license tests are all allowed to be redone over and over and over again for full credit. High stakes, fully reflective of the larger responsible world kids will one day enter, they're allowed to be done for full credit over and over again, how pompous is it for a classroom teacher to say, my quiz, this paper, this test, this homework is so indicative of the larger world of responsibility that I'm trying to teach you, and so high stakes, it can't possibly be redone. You don't have a pedagogical leg to stand on. One time I came up behind one of my students who was trash-talking me. He was very frustrated with me. And his classmates saw me coming up behind him. His eyes got really big because there's no time to warn his classmate friend that I was coming up, particularly since I was walking up behind him doing this. And I stood behind that student of mine, and I listened to him say this, man, Mr. Warmley makes you do it over and over again until you learn it. It sucks. For me, touchdown. I'll grab it. In fact, I find it a bit of a cop-out. It's a weak teacher who doesn't allow redos and do-overs, because you're not teaching to make sure he learns it. You're teaching to make sure he learns it on the conveyor belt. You're 11, you learn this. You're 12, you learn this. You're hiding behind the factory model of schooling. If you teach something to kids and they don't learn it, it's like a 0 or a D or an F, and you say there's no chance to recover, you said 3 things that are unacceptable to a highly accomplished professional. You said, first, hey, this assignment had absolutely no educational value. Yet I assigned it to you anyway, but it was totally skippable. That's not cool. You're assigning busy work, you bring shame on the whole profession when you do that. If it's worth assigning, it's worth getting done, because it matters. It transforms a student from where he was prior to if he had not done it at all. Second, you said, hey, you didn't do all this work? Nah, just take the 0, you don't have to do it. How does that teach consequence and accountability? The consequence in my class for not doing your work is doing your work. I will haunt your nightmares. And the third one is the most heinous. You just said, it's okay if you don't learn this. That's beyond most teachers' pay grade. Only a state, a province, a school board gets to decide what the curriculum is, not the classroom teacher. I need to make sure that I teach in whatever way possible you become successful, not just to say, here's the curriculum, and now let me document your deficiencies with it. That's not teaching, and we should live up to the promise of all that teaching can be.
Okay, so he said a lot of things about redos and retakes, and having talked to quite a few of you prior to this, that I know you don't agree with every statement he made. So what I would like you to see, if you took my challenge from the first part, is I'd like you to, and we're kind of perfectly paired right here, Mr. Tarkenton, you'll have to play teacher again for a minute. If you could turn to the person next to you, and I just want you to take 2 minutes apiece. We'll do this, and if it doesn't take that quite long and you want to turn it over to the next person, you certainly can, but at least 2 minutes to be able to talk and say, what was it that you liked from the video? Again, trying to discard the pieces that really got under your skin and save those for another time. So if you could share what you think and do it with the partner next to you.
I like the idea of the rotates and how it's related to real world so far, I'm like, teaching job and stuff like that. I
You guys are awfully quiet here. Nothing? Didn't agree with any piece of it?
No, I do.
Which piece?
Well, I'm with you. It's very admirable to want to make every kid do every assignment. I like that idea, but I haven't figured out how you.
Do you have to do every assignment?
No, but that's kind of what I'm thinking
right.
in my mind.
So that's
well,
the piece.
like,
So what about that do you like, and
that
how
kind of
could?
ties into what into
Right,
this
correct.
group
There's
bit,
a
like,
lot of overlap between these two, right?
because,
For sure.
Like, I'm okay. I don't want to sit here and regrade every quiz that you took, but I would be happy to let you retake the summative, because that's what we're trying to get to. So, like, if we're moving through the unit and you bomb a quiz, well, how about you fix what's on that quiz for the summative, and then, you know, if you're still not there, then I have more of an okay with letting you retake the test. Or redo
Okay,
the
so that's the
test.
piece.
I don't know, you know what I mean?
You agree with that concept?
Yes.
That's what you're saying. Okay. Carmi.
And that also helps me on a personal level, because I can't, you know, let 150 kids stay out of every.
Right.
I mean, I would just,
Right.
I don't know.
I think there has to come a time when you say you're done. And that's what none of the researchers I
It's
hear
incorrect. Hopefully
ever get to.
speak to you. If you haven't had a chance, if you're already switching, that's okay. If not, if you let the other person speak, if you haven't done that yet.
There has to be a point where we say, done. You know, I can't take another redo, I can't do another, there has to be a time when we say, this is a hard and fast deadline.
Okay, almost maybe we'll get to that. Did you guys both get a chance to share about what you liked? What was it? Any of it? You liked a lot of it, or most of it?
Kids, and you know, and it's been the past couple of years that I've changed that mentality.
I switched the questions around.
I see a lot of people, you know, and see what was happening with her kids, and have some of my kids and it's helped me and her both change what we're doing, and a lot of that's because it's,
You to tell me how you would.
yeah, we're here for that.
Okay.
It's not here to record a grade.
Right.
It's not here to,
I have spent
you know,
9 weeks trying to get.
it's understanding. We're not teachers.
Contacted parents.
We're teachers, we're guidance counselors, we're parents, we're everything else, especially at our school.
Right.
There's so much more than just
Right.
teachers here that
You like the intervention piece,
And
like
I
of
still have kids.
trying to get the kid to come back to it.
that's what I heard.
So
3 weeks or 4 weeks ago, I assigned 38 of my ILAP2 trait kids 2 days of detention every week for the
And I
next
don't
4
know what you
weeks.
do with that.
And I did that because it was
to get them to come do
if
this,
you're not going to figure it out.
And right now I have my.
right?
But now a lot of them have said, even though I don't have detention anymore,
You'll still do
coming
it.
once or twice a week because I see, hey, I got a 48 on my first test, I got a 90 on my second
But
test.
for me.
Maybe you can share that in a second. Has everybody had a chance to share a little bit? I don't want to rehash everything that you guys talked about right now, but anyone who want to volunteer to say, like Danny was just talking about some really good stuff, and share just a little bit about what you really latched onto from that video or your current practice, something somebody else is doing with this.
Well, what I was saying was, I didn't actually disagree with most of what he said. And what I was telling him was what I just had to do with my Algebra 2 trait kids, who are supposed to be the smarter ones. I had to assign 38 of them academic detentions. They had to stay after twice a week, every week for 4 weeks. And they were told, if you miss a day, it's a referral. And you got to talk to your administrator about what's going on. And it was because I laid it out to him as, if you're not going to figure it out, if you're not going to understand what you need to do to be successful in the college prep course, I'm going to figure it out for you. I'm going to show you. And they got assigned the detentions. I didn't have any one of the 38 kids miss a single day. And they asked me at the end of last week and yesterday if their detentions were done. I said, yeah. And they're like, well, I'm still coming because some of them went from getting a 48 on their Unit 1 test to getting an 80 and a 90, and it's harder material on the second test. And they finally are catching the clue, this is what I'm going to have to do to be successful. And now they're starting to take that ownership of making sure that they're successful.
Because that speaks to the intervention piece, I think, that Wormley was talking about, and that takes some time. And some teachers either maybe don't have that time to give, or it's a little more than what they're doing now, and so that's understandable. But that they're showing how well they're doing as a result. Is that what you're basically trying to say, if I hear? Anybody else want to share something that they really latched onto in that particular? Carrie?
Not to demonize the failure, because sometimes we are their support system, us as teachers. So I learned a little bit last week about, maybe a student that I thought was just a slacker and just didn't want to do his work. But then after keeping him after school, realized it's just amazing that he makes it to school every day with what he's got going on. So sometimes we are that support, and we need to give them that second chance and that hope that the other video talked about.
Okay. Did anybody struggle with the what Danny was talking about with the time piece? That's a lot. Go after those kids.
I agree with everything, but just my life is so. I'm not trying to make this about me, but it's just, I don't know. I'm trying to rack my brains with ways to do this without it being I don't have a lot of time to, I mean, we all say the same thing, we're all in the same boat, but
Well,
I'm trying to come up with solutions in my head. Okay, how can I work this?
Okay.
Where like they're still getting that benefit with them having, to put all the time more to myself too.
well, I can help with my kids. What ended up happening is they actually built their own collaboration. There were a lot of times after school, I was just a babysitter. I sat at my desk doing my own stuff, and the kids just moved the desks in the room on their own. They put them back perfectly and amazingly. But they would move the desks on their own. They would sit together, and they were helping each other. The brighter kids, I had to kind of initiate it, but there were times I would be at a PAC meeting. I'd come back, and there's 25 kids still sitting in my room working. And they've been working the whole time. I'd walk up, I'd check some of their work. Everything was, so they took ownership. It was just giving them that catalyst to take the ownership, to helping each other.
Okay. That's something different than maybe what I'm going to put there for you. I'm going to adjust a little bit on the fly. I didn't want to show you all of this one because one has got a part 2 to that. And I'm gathering the feedback in this room, and let me know if I'm wrong, that what I've heard in talking to teachers and gathering the feedback just in that manner is that the timepiece, I'm doing a lot. I'm doing a lot. This sounds like a lot of time. And what this video just says, I was only going to show you first a couple of minutes to where he says, it's one important thing he says, it's at teacher discretion. He's like, you don't have to make it unlimited. It's not, if you don't want to go as far as what Danny's doing, okay. Is there something else you can do within the construct of your grade book that you feel comfortable trying to let the kid do that? He goes on to say things like, I allow redos and retakes on a lot of these assessments all the way up until the last week of the 9 weeks. And he tell my kids, he's like, I need that for my family, for my sanity. I need to have that. I don't allow him to just turn all that work in that last week of the grading period as a way to protect himself from having too much time. So I've put together a couple of strategies. So I'm going to skip this because I think you guys are already there on that piece. I don't think we need to see that. But here's a couple of ideas, and these are just ideas. And if you're one of those people that likes to have something in front of you and say, instead of it's too theoretical right now, I can't wrap my brain around it. So some of the suggestions I've put down here are things like only allow redos and retakes if the students have demonstrated they're better prepared to take the assignment. I think, Ashley, we talked about that just last week.
I'm doing that next week. I already come to the plan. I'm not letting them take the test the first time until they hand me a completed study guide.
Right.
They have to come in the door. I'm checking them when they come in the door. And they are not taking the test until that study guide is complete.
And so you're almost
I'm
proactively,
hoping
right?
that's going to reduce the amount of kids that fail the first time because I'm tired of that. So.
Right. Okay.
And if they show up with it not done, they're sitting there and doing it.
So I don't know if that's
and then-
technically a retake,
No,
but it's
but
along the same.
It's gonna lower my number.
It's a pre-do, right? Okay, but it's in the vein of this strategy. So yeah, some of those things like that. I know there are teachers that require you just can't come and retake it. You have to do something. You have to demonstrate to me that you've done something about it before you do that. The second one is what I was talking about, kind of what Wormley said. Establish your parameters for where you're allowing this stuff to take. It doesn't have to be everything and anything the kid wants to retake. So you tell them, this is what you can redo, this is what you can retake. I want to say, I've seen some teachers talk about this concept, that you encourage redos and retakes by simply marking incomplete on an assignment or a test maybe even, and saying, no, you're not there yet. What I would do, because I imagine, you might, if it was a test and the kid got a 60, and you mark incomplete on his test, I would write the 60 down somewhere, put it in your grade book somewhere where they can't see that. So like if you ever push came to shove and they didn't end up redoing the assignment, I guess you had a grade to fall back on that they did. But don't let the kid know that. Let him think that he has to, man, I'm not there yet. You tell him, I think you can do better. I'm pretty sure you can do better. Come back and let's keep working on this. You can do stuff that, I know some of you, anybody disaggregate their tests, their assessments in here and do that? Ashley does as well. So if you find that they've only missed this one concept, why don't you just reassess them on that? The redo is just that. So it doesn't take as much of your time. Find out what they do and then give them the credit for that instead of doing the whole assignment. And then lastly, the one on there is alternative ways to demonstrate. Wormley talks about in the second video, which I'll email to you in case you want to watch it, is that you can do, you're the teacher. You know when the kid knows it. You're the professional expert. So if you think I can just simply orally quiz you, I'm sure Carrie's now got it. I sat there and she came up to my desk and we had a conversation about the topic, and what she said demonstrated to me that she understands what it is that she didn't know before. I, as the teacher, can feel comfortable giving that. So it doesn't have to require all of your time to do that, is the point of some of these strategies. Yes, Bridget.
One of the things that we were talking about, and maybe one of y'all have a better answer for us, when we give a retake, because I've been given retakes, so let's say a kid got a 72 and a kid got 54. And we say, if you got 70 or below, you can take a retake. So they come and take it, and they get a 96. You record that 96, or do you
Yes,
say
that's
70 is the highest grade? Because the kid who got a 72, he could probably come retake it too.
See, that's why
See what
I don't put a
That's
limit
where
on
I'm
time.
Yeah,
retake. If a kid gets an 85 and they're like, no, I want a 90, I want an A. But now I limit mine is my kids are allowed one retake a quarter on a test.
It's not necessary, but trying something different is the point of what we're doing. So I am going to ask you, and we're, I think, right on time.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If you're deciding, this is really fun, if you're deciding to start making some changes on your grading policies, do you have to send out something to parents so that they're aware that you Yeah, but that's not a problem for us to change it mid-year. It's not like we have to next year to make changes to our
change
policy.
in terms of, but as we've had conversation, it's frustrating that sometimes technology drives what we do. And so Synergy's gradebook is locked.
Right,
So you may not be able to change how you set your gradebook up.
right.
So as I was having a conversation in the library, you may elect to create a dummy book with your new philosophy of how you would grade. And then of course we market it with overrunning the final grade. So if you're finding that your new practices are coming out with a grade maybe 3 or 4 points higher than what your traditional book right now is set up for, you can override. Or you can, using the current gradebook setup, manipulate how you're entering those grades in to better reflect how you would.
Well, yeah,
Either
I'm
way,
not
you
even
need to
looking at messing with
communicate.
Synergy and the system that I have set up as far as the weighting and everything, but as far as like if you were to do a retake
Yes,
on
you need to
something,
communicate that
you
with
know,
your
that's not
stakeholders.
something,
Yes,
just, or how homework might be graded, that
Yes.
instead of,
absolutely. You communicate with your stakeholders.
Right.
That's not a problem.
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't an issue to change it partway through the year and not having to wait.
Anything that's going to reflect student learning, and demonstration of mastery, and help the student, I don't think anybody can have an issue with that.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And when you're doing the retakes, do you alter the original assignment or the original test,
Yeah.
or you just give it the exact?
Quite a few people advocate to do differently because that way it can't simply be, I tried this many times and eventually I picked the right answer. So yes, you should consider an alternative assessment that
So like
the same
test version
thing,
1, test version
and it could be
2.
test version 1, test version 2, or if like again you knew which part they didn't know and you
Right.
figure out a way just to do that. That's up to you and how you want to do that. But no, we would discourage you giving just the same test over and over again because the student just might eventually get it right by having seen the
once
same
it gets
question.
seen it so
Correct.
many times, then-
Right. And that's not what we're going for. Remember the Virginia mastery of content knowledge, and that's what ultimately we want to get to. So in all of these things that you guys are talking about, which you're grade, not trying to just make a bunch of kids pass more, but do they know the material better? So when you fill this sheet out, in fact, I was going to let you know, you don't have to turn this into one about put something on paper. Have this by tomorrow, even maybe the end of the week. This is a perfect time for us to start something, try something new, because at the beginning of 9 weeks, you could do it with one class. You could do it with all your class. Whatever is comfortable that you feel comfortable in trying to do. But I want you to take some reflective time, if you want, on what it is for maybe the next 4.5, and I put that because that's up till progress report time. 4.5 weeks, what will you commit to trying? And that's when we invited you guys to this session and the session that's next door, is we're really hoping to have some teachers step into the waters and try some things.
There's no hidden agenda. Please know, this is not targeting using some teachers to try and push something. I don't want anybody who's in a conspiracy theory mindset to think that this is something that we're going to force down your throats eventually. It is a matter of, I just want you to think about, because again, I reflect on if I was a teacher in the classroom now, I would be so much better than I was back then, because I would have adopted some of these practices. So, what would I do differently? So that's all I'm asking, just as I said,
Right.
think about it.
And then, Stan.
I was just gonna say, off of your strategies to consider, the only one I would say cautionary of is the I one, because we've had teachers that have either left it blank or put that in, and then all of a sudden you get to the end of the quarter, the kid never did do it, and now you have to plug, even if it's a 50 in or a 60 or a 40 or a 0, and all of a sudden their grade goes from an 86 to a 66, and now the parents emailing, calling, saying, how the heck did my child drop 20% in one day? And we've had the issue with Avid kids. Avid's sitting here thinking the kids are doing okay,
The solution-
and then the day grades go in, they drop
The
to a
solution to that
80.
is you mark on the paper or whatever, and so the kid doesn't see the
Right.
grade, but then in the grade book, you actually have a grade book. Like,
You mark it for you so that you know what it is, so you have something to fall back on. The purpose of that suggestion was that maybe the student would be motivated to think, I'm not done yet, not knowing you've put down whatever the initial grade the student earned on that particular assessment is what Ashley's talking about. And I don't want
Right, but
to.
I mean, if you don't have it in your grade book,
I'm saying you
like
put it
when
in the grade
Eccles
book.
pulls
Right.
up student view,
Yeah.
it shows an 86 for that kid. She thinks everything's fine, and then all of
Okay.
a sudden,
But how many
Well,
times
I
have you
can
seen
say-
a kid get a paperback with a number on it, and that's the finality? Like when they toss in the trash, oh, I got a 60
Well,
on that.
sometimes
Right.
what I
Versus
do
marking
with assignments,
incomplete.
when I don't think that they're up to the level that a kid should be, I'll put the score on it and I'll write the word redo, and in my Synergy, I have the grade, and one of my comments is redo.
Yeah.
So when they look in Synergy, they can see, oh, there's a 20 there, and it says redo, and that stays there unless they change it.
Right,
And
now I
if
do
they
that.
change it, I take out the word redo and replace the score. But if they've never changed it, it sits there so the parent can see, oh, you could have redone this and you didn't.
see, that's why I don't mind putting zeros in. 'Cause
Real quickly, I don't mean to cut you off. We have another group anxious to come in this room and utilize it to do. But the second piece of this, please take some time to fill this out, but I would like to have it back tomorrow or by the end of the week. But the second piece, don't ignore that second piece. How are you going to know whether or not you thought this worked or not? And I'm okay with it, you saying, I didn't like it, didn't work out, but you tried it. How are you going to know? That's an important piece to me, is to know how are you going to determine whether or not that strategy worked for you. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate you coming, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.